My name is Lauren Whitmore. I'm 29 years old. And for a long time, I believed love was about compromise, until I learned that sometimes compromise is just another word for surrender. Up until 8 months ago, I was engaged to a man I thought I would spend my life with. His name was Ethan Cole. We'd been together for 4 years, engaged for 1. We met the way so many people in San Francisco do, through mutual friends, at a rooftop birthday party where everyone pretended they weren't checking LinkedIn between drinks. We were both in tech, both ambitious, both convinced that someday, if we just worked hard enough, everything would click into place. For a while, it did. We shared a tiny one-bedroom apartment in the Mission District. Secondhand couch, mismatched plates, late-night takeout eaten straight from the containers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. And then everything shifted. The recruiter reached out on a Tuesday afternoon. Small startup, early stage, but the offer made my hands shake. Senior engineering role, full ownership over back-end infrastructure, and 0.8% equity. Life-changing if it worked. There was one catch. They were based in Austin, Texas. I waited 2 days before telling Ethan, rehearsing the conversation in my head like a speech I couldn't afford to mess up. That night, we sat on the couch eating pad thai from a paper box. "So," I said carefully, "I got contacted about a job." He barely looked up. "Another recruiter?" "Kind of. It's different." That got his attention. I explained the role, the equity, the funding, the vision. He smiled at first, real smile, proud smile. Then I said the word Austin. His face changed instantly. "Austin?" he repeated, "as in Texas?" "Yeah. Lauren, we've talked about this," he said, already pulling back. "My life is here, my friends, my career. I'm not moving to some dead city." "It's not dead," I said quickly. "And this isn't just a job. This could set us up for life." "If," he shot back. "You want me to gamble my 20s on a maybe?" We argued for 2 hours. Not yelling, worse than that. Calm, sharp, final. Over the next month, the same conversation replayed itself, always ending in the same place. And then, one afternoon at a coffee shop near his office, Ethan gave me an ultimatum. "If you take this job," he said, staring straight into his cup, "I'm not coming with you." I felt something settle in my chest. "So, you're asking me to choose?" "Yes." I imagined staying, turning it down, marrying him, and resenting him forever. 2 weeks later, he gave me back the ring. By mid-March, I was on a plane to Austin with 2 suitcases and a future that terrified me. And I didn't know it yet. But this was the last time Ethan would ever have power over my choices. Austin didn't greet me like a fresh start. It greeted me like a test. The first night, I stood in the doorway of my new apartment and listened to the emptiness, how sound bounced off bare walls, how the silence felt louder than traffic ever did back home. The place smelled like fresh paint and cardboard. My 2 suitcases sat by the door like I hadn't decided whether I was staying. I told myself it was temporary, just until I got furniture, just until I met people, just until I didn't wake up reaching for a body that wasn't there. But the truth was simpler, uglier. I was alone. I slept on a mattress on the floor for the first month. No bed frame, no nightstand. My phone charging on the carpet beside me like I was still 22, pretending this kind of struggle was romantic. It wasn't. It was cold air from a cheap AC unit. It was eating tacos from food trucks because I didn't own pans. It was coming home at midnight with my shoulders locked from stress and my brain still running through code paths like prayers. And it was Ethan. Not in the way people mean when they say they couldn't stop thinking about someone. Not a warm ache. He was a phantom weight. Because it wasn't just that I missed him. It was the way my mind kept trying to rewrite the story so it hurt less. If I hadn't pushed so hard. If I'd offered him something better. If I'd waited for a different offer. Sometimes I'd catch myself opening Instagram, scrolling without thinking, half hoping I'd see his name, half terrified I would. But he was gone. We'd unfollowed each other in the first week after the breakup. No dramatic posts, no public sadness, just the clean, surgical removal of each other from our timelines. Which made it worse, because there was no villain I could point to. Just a man who'd loved me, until loving me required inconvenience. And that realization burned in quiet places. At Apex Analytics, nobody cared about my heartbreak. They cared that I could build infrastructure that wouldn't collapse under scale. The company was tiny when I joined. 12 people crowded into a bright, chaotic office where whiteboards covered every surface, and someone was always microwaving something that smelled like regret. The founders, David and Priya, moved like people who hadn't slept properly in months, but their eyes were alive in a way that made you sit up straighter. They didn't talk about the company like it was a job. They talked about it like it was a mission. Austin isn't the story, Priya told me on my third day, when she found me still at my desk at 10:40 p.m. The work is. The impact is. David was blunt, almost aggressively so. We're building something that will either change enterprise data processing, he said, tapping my onboarding packet like a gavel, or it'll crash and burn spectacularly. Either way, it won't be boring. That should have scared me. Instead, it made me feel strangely held. Because if I failed here, it wouldn't be because I was unlovable. It would be because the universe doesn't hand out guarantees. And after Ethan, I could respect that kind of honesty. The first month, my life became a loop. Wake up, code, meetings, more code. Crash into the mattress, repeat. Some nights, I'd look at the ceiling and feel the full weight of what I'd done. I'd broken my engagement. I'd left San Francisco. I'd walked away from a man I thought was my future for a company that might not survive the year. There were nights I didn't cry, because crying takes energy, and I didn't have any left. There were other nights I did, quietly, into my pillow, embarrassed by my own body for still wanting what my mind knew was gone. And then, slowly, things started clicking. Not in a dramatic movie montage way, no triumphant music. In tiny, almost invisible ways. A data pipeline I'd built stopped crashing under load. A client demo ran clean. Priya nodded at something I said in a meeting and wrote it down. And then came the first big moment. We landed a Fortune 500 client, a $2 million annual contract. I remember standing in the all-hands meeting with a lukewarm coffee in my hand, listening as David announced it like he was trying not to smile too hard. People cheered, someone cried, someone else started clapping like their hands might save their life. I didn't cheer, I just did math. Because when you've spent your whole life being practical, joy always arrives with numbers attached. If we were landing contracts like that, we weren't just surviving. We were building momentum. Then another client signed. Then another. By June, we were processing over 50 billion data points per day. The office changed. Not physically, still cramped, still loud, still smelling faintly of espresso and anxiety. But the energy shifted. It wasn't just hustle anymore. It was belief. I started hearing words like board pressure and market conditions tossed around like casual conversation. And then, one evening, after everyone else had left, David stood in the doorway of my office. He looked tired. His tie was loosened, like he'd been strangled by his own ambition all day. "You ever think about how fast this is moving?" he asked. "Every day," I admitted. He smiled, small, private. "Good, because the board's pushing. They want us to consider going public sooner than expected." My stomach dropped. "That's insane," I whispered. "That's the point," he said. That night, I walked home under the warm Austin sky and realized something terrifying. For the first time since leaving Ethan, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I might win. And that was when the universe, like it was listening, decided to remind me that the past doesn't stay buried just because you stop looking at it. Because 2 months later, without warning, my name started appearing in places it had never been before. Not big headlines, not celebrity level, but enough. Tech blogs, investor chatter, a quote about early infrastructure leadership. My friends back in San Francisco started texting. "Is this you?" "Lauren, what the hell? Congrats." "Girl, you're everywhere." I tried to shrug it off. But deep down, I felt something stir, a quiet dread I couldn't name. Because I knew Ethan still had eyes, even if he wasn't following me, even if we weren't speaking. News travels in the Bay like wildfire. And if my name was circulating, it was only a matter of time before it reached him. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself he made his choice. But that night, lying on my mattress, I stared at the ceiling and imagined the moment Ethan would see my name beside a company on the verge of exploding. And I hated myself for wondering, would he feel regret or would he feel opportunity? The all-hands meeting happened on a Wednesday morning. The kind of morning that feels ordinary right up until it isn't. The office was louder than usual. People clustering in small groups, whispers that stopped when leadership walked by. Someone had dragged extra chairs into the common area. David and Priya stood at the front, not smiling. That's how I knew. David didn't waste time. "We're going public." For half a second, no one reacted, like our brains needed permission to believe him. Then the room exploded. People screamed. Someone dropped a laptop. A designer near the window burst into tears and hugged the nearest human within reach. Priya had to raise her hands to calm everyone down. "The IPO is scheduled for October 15th, she continued. We've priced the shares at $24. Early projections show we could open significantly higher. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat perfectly still, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might fracture a rib. Because my brain was already doing what it always did when things got emotional. It went to numbers. I owned 0.8% of Apex Analytics. If the valuation held, I stopped calculating halfway through, not because I couldn't, because I was afraid of what the answer would mean. That night, I called my parents. My mom cried immediately, full, unfiltered sobs that made me hold the phone away from my ear. My dad kept repeating, "I'm so proud of you," like if he said it enough times, it would solidify into reality. 6 months earlier, I'd been sleeping on a mattress on the floor, wondering if I'd ruined my life. Now I was standing in my kitchen, barefoot, staring at a future I hadn't let myself imagine. The weeks leading up to the IPO were chaos. Press interviews, photo shoots, company emails forwarded with subject lines like, "Have you seen this yet?" Apex was everywhere. And because I'd joined early, and because the back-end infrastructure had been a nightmare before I rebuilt it, my name started appearing in articles. Not in headlines, but enough. Enough that anyone who'd ever known me would see it. I didn't think about Ethan. Not consciously. But when you spend years with someone, part of your brain keeps them on file forever. October 15th arrived with brutal clarity. I woke up at 5 a.m., heart racing, unable to sleep. The market opened at 6:30 a.m. Pacific time. I watched from my apartment as our ticker appeared on the NASDAQ screen. Priced at $24. Within the first hour, it hit $41. By the end of the day, it closed at $38.50. I sat on my couch, laptop balanced on my knees, staring at my brokerage account like it might vanish if I blinked. On paper, I was worth just over $12 million. It wasn't liquid. I couldn't touch most of it for 6 months. But it was real. My phone buzzed nonstop. Former coworkers, old friends, distant acquaintances who suddenly remembered my name. And then, at 8:03 p.m., a notification appeared that made my stomach drop. Ethan Cole. "Hey, Lauren, I saw the news about Apex. Congratulations. That's incredible. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for 10 full minutes. Part of me wanted to throw my phone across the room. Part of me wanted to respond immediately. I did neither. I waited until the next morning. "Thanks, sure, what's up?" His reply came almost instantly. "Can I call you?" We spoke that night. It was awkward at first. Too careful. Like two people stepping around furniture that used to belong to them. Then he sighed. "I made a mistake," he said. The words landed heavier than I expected. "I shouldn't have given you that ultimatum. I was scared. I was selfish. I think about it all the time." I didn't interrupt. "I miss you," he continued. "I miss us." Silence stretched between us. "I know how this looks," he said quickly. "I know you probably think I'm only reaching out because of the IPO. But I've been thinking about this for months. I just didn't know how to reach out. And when I saw the news, it felt like a sign." "A sign," I repeated, my voice flat. "I've dated other people," he said. "None of them felt right. I kept comparing them to you. I realized I let the best thing in my life go because I was too stubborn to take a risk." He paused. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I just want to see you, in person. I'll fly to Austin." I didn't answer right away, because hearing his voice had done exactly what I'd been afraid it would do. It cracked something open. I called my friend Rachel the next day. She'd moved to Austin around the same time I did and worked at a fintech startup across town. We met for drinks at a bar that smelled like citrus and ambition. I told her everything. She didn't hesitate. "Don't do it," she said flatly. "You don't know that," I argued weakly. "Lauren," she said, leaning forward, "he dumped you because you were moving to what he called a dead city. Now that city turned you into a multimillionaire, and suddenly he's had an emotional awakening. That's not coincidence, that's timing." Maybe he really did realize he was wrong. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "And maybe I'll wake up tomorrow with a trust fund. Go in if you want. Just don't go in blind." I thought about it for a week. Then I texted Ethan. "Okay, you can come, but I'm not making any promises." He arrived the following Saturday. I picked him up from the airport, my hands tight on the steering wheel. And the moment I saw him walking toward me, same posture, same familiar half smile, my chest tightened. We hugged, awkward and restrained. I drove us to a coffee shop downtown. We talked for 3 hours. He apologized, again and again. Said he'd been immature, that he'd prioritized the wrong things, that he'd spent 8 months regretting his decision. He told me about the women he'd dated, a finance consultant, a product manager at a big tech company. "None of them were you," he said softly. "I'm willing to move," he added. "I'll come to Austin. I'll quit my job. I'll start over. I just want another chance." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something felt off. The way his eyes flicked to my watch, the casual questions about my apartment, the curiosity about my plans. Small things. But small things add up. Ethan, I said finally, my voice steady despite my heart racing. Can I ask you something? Of course. If Apex hadn't gone public, would you have reached out? He hesitated. Just for a second. But I saw it. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe not this soon, but eventually. That answer followed me long after he flew back to San Francisco. And I knew deep down we were standing on a fault line. And it was only a matter of time before something cracked. Ethan flew back to Austin 3 weeks later. By then, we'd been texting almost every day. Nothing heavy at first. Casual check-ins. Shared memories. Inside jokes that still fit too easily. Like clothes you never really threw away. Then the tone shifted. He started sending me listings. Austin apartments with floor-to-ceiling windows and rooftop pools. This one's close to downtown, he texted once. Could be a good fresh start, another time. I told myself it was sweet. I told myself this was what effort looked like. But a small, quiet part of me kept watching. That weekend felt good. Too good. We went out to dinner downtown, walked along the river, laughed the way we used to, like we already knew how the other person would finish a sentence. On Saturday night, after too much wine, he kissed me. And for a moment, my body forgot everything my brain had learned. On Sunday evening, we sat on my couch, legs tucked under us, the city glowing through the windows. That's when he said it. I've been thinking about the wedding. My stomach tightened. If we get back together, he continued quickly, we shouldn't wait too long. Maybe 6 months. We've already lost so much time. That's fast, I said carefully. I know, but... He smiled. Once we're married, things will be easier. Combining finances, making joint decisions, planning investments together. I froze. Investments? He blinked. Yeah. I started working with a financial advisor a few weeks ago. My heart dropped. A financial advisor, I repeated. And you've been discussing what exactly? Well, not your money specifically, he said, then hesitated. But I mentioned we might be getting back together, and she gave me some guidance. Something cold spread through my chest. Ethan, I said slowly, we're not even officially back together. You're twisting this, he snapped. I'm just trying to be smart. Smart would be taking things slow, I shot back. Smart would be rebuilding trust. What you're doing feels like planning a merger. His face flushed. That's not fair. I'm not some gold digger. Then why the rush, I asked. Why marriage? Why advisors? Why now? He stood up, pacing. Because I love you. Because I want a future. Because I don't want to lose you again. I stood too. Then love me where I am, I said. Not where my net worth is. The fight exploded after that. He accused me of changing, of becoming cold, of letting money turn me into someone suspicious and guarded. I accused him of seeing opportunity where there should have been patience. Eventually, the words ran out. I drove him to his hotel in silence. He flew back to San Francisco the next morning. 2 days later, I got a text. I think we want different things right now. Maybe we're just in different places. I didn't reply. Because for the first time, the truth felt clear. This wasn't love returning. It was access. And I was done confusing the two. 4 months passed. Not the dramatic kind of time that announces itself with milestones or speeches, but the quiet kind that does its work slowly, in the background, while you're busy living. The lockup period ended in stages. I sold shares in careful tranches, exactly the way my lawyer and accountant recommended. After taxes, I was sitting on just under $7 million in liquid cash. Enough to breathe. Enough to choose. I bought a house in Austin, nothing flashy. Clean lines, big windows, a backyard that caught the afternoon sun just right. I furnished it deliberately, piece by piece, choosing things because I liked them, not because they fit anyone else's vision of success. I stayed at Apex, but I stepped back from the grind, transitioned into a role that let me mentor, build thoughtfully, and still have a life outside of work. For the first time in years, my calendar had white space. I filled it with travel, with dinners that didn't end in arguments, with mornings that didn't start in dread. Ethan texted once around the holidays. Merry Christmas, hope you're doing well. I replied the same way, nothing more. Through mutual friends, I heard he was dating someone new, a woman in finance, San Francisco, predictable. I felt nothing. Not relief, not bitterness, just distance. And that's when I knew I was done. A few weeks later, one of his friends reached out, saying Ethan wanted to clear the air and talk again. I declined politely. Some doors don't need closure. They close themselves. Someone asked me recently if I regret how things ended. I don't, because Ethan showed me who he was twice. The first time when he asked me to choose between love and ambition. The second, when he came back only after the ambition paid out. I'm grateful for both lessons. I trusted my instincts. I chose the unknown. And I built a life that doesn't require anyone's permission. I'm dating again. Casually, intentionally, with no rush and no illusions. Turns out Austin has a nightlife after all. Who knew?